Hello, I can't believe it's July now and it's Rowing Chat again. I'm Rebecca Caro, I'm your host here, and I of course have a guest with me. Hello, who are you and what do you do?
Hi, Rebecca. I am Katie Godfrey. I'm the Global Senior Account Executive here at Nielsen-Kellerman, and I've been here for about 15 years.
Wow, that's quite a job title. And 15 years, how awesome. You must be part of the family.
Well, at NK, all of our employees are part of the family. It's actually a great part of our company. It was founded by two friends. Their daughter, one of the daughters, has now taken over as our CEO very capably. And we have dogs in our office. And in fact, my husband works here as well. So it is like a big family for us.
Fabulous. Katie, tell us a little bit about your track record. I guess you've come out of a track record of rowing.
Oh, yeah. So I went to Temple University for undergraduate, and while I was there, I was a walk-on to Temple's rowing team, and I became a coxswain due to my size. And by my senior year, I was co-captain of the varsity team on the women's side. And after my first time on the Schuylkill River in Philadelphia, I was hooked on rowing, and I have continued to stay passionate in the sport for all that time.
That's fantastic. Tell us a little bit about your own experience. Did you do all the big regattas when you were a student?
I did, to some extent. Unfortunately, the one regatta that I never got to do, and I always wished I had, was the Royal Henley Regatta. I've had many friends that have raced there, and I know what a great experience that is. So I've always regretted that I didn't get to race in that. But I do the Head of the Charles, San Diego Crew Classic, all the big U.S. races.
Fantastic. And are you still active in the sport?
I am. I moved to dragonboating to a drummer. I got recruited onto the U.S. men's team as a drummer for dragonboating. And their world championships often conflict with rowing. In dragonboating, women can drum for a men's team, which is what I do. I'm on a men's team, and it's just a different competitive nature, and I've learned to love that too.
Fantastic. So you're still loyal to water sports?
Yeah. I am. Yeah, it's the river. The river continues to call me.
That's fantastic. So let's move into some of the questions that we've got for you from our listeners. We had an inquiry in from Kate, who has asked, how does NK decide what's important for coxswains or rowers when making new products?
It's something that we ask ourselves whenever we're looking into a new product. We have a pretty extensive research time period. Just our through our dealers worldwide, we try and listen to what our customers are saying, both negative and positive feedback. We put a lot of value into that, and we try and really adapt our products to answer any needs or any demands that the customer, be it a coxswain or a rower, may have. My experience as a coxswain has certainly helped to have somebody inside. We also have a couple rowers from one of our engineers started off as a learn to row, and he now has, I think he's done his first master's regatta. And then we have some competitive rowers that are continuing to train for the U.S. national team. So we have a whole range of rowing expertise here as well.
So talk us through, you've been there 15 years, you've obviously seen quite a lot of products come from an idea to actually being launched onto the market. Can you tell us about one of them?
I'm sorry, Rebecca, could you repeat that?
You've seen a lot of products come to the market in your years at NK. Can you describe the process that one product took from being an idea to being a finished product?
Absolutely. So We typically will have a product proposal for the product. It can come from anybody in the company, and they just put in their ideas. And typically they come after a regatta, after we walk back from a customer, or if we talk to a customer, we will start to put that little idea into someone's head. We then do a lot of research, and the research comes from two ends. Our engineering department does a lot of research on their side, and the sales and marketing team does research to really understand the needs of the customer. We then will turn it into, if we still feel that it's something we move forward with, we turn it into a full project, and we have a kickoff meeting, kind of a little one-day party to get everybody on board. We bring in some outside vendors that could have help with the products that are going into there, and we fully kick it off. And then we have a product lead and a project lead, and there are champions. They drive it the whole way through until we're ready to release the product to the end user.
Talk about one that you've been involved in. What happened?
Well, I've been involved in quite a few. The Blue Ocean Megaphone is one of the ones that I was involved in through the research phase all the way through to release, and I still love this product. I know another person had asked what our most innovative product would be, and for me, it's by far the Blue Ocean Megaphone. After I stopped coxing full time, I was coaching for a while. As a coach, I had a lot of frustrations over megaphones, and we have other coaches here, and we took all of our frustrations, and then we went along Boathouse Row in Philadelphia, and we asked all the coaches for their frustrations, and we developed a product that responded to every frustration. And it is waterproof, it's drop tested, it doesn't fall off your launch when you accelerate to catch up to that boat that's going to run into another boat. It's just a great product, and I think that a lot of that came from us having a full understanding of the demands that coaches put on some of their equipment.
I love the idea of the drop testing. So how do you do something like that?
I'm sorry, Rebecca, you broke up again, so I missed that.
How do you drop test?
Drop test?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is a process because we drop test to a military standard, a U.S. military standard. So the drop test has to be 6 feet high. So what is 6 feet? 2 meters, right? And it has to be dropped at least 10 asphalt, and it has to survive with minimal damage. It's kind of a fun test. Yeah. How else is a coach going to drop it? How else is somebody? We've done drop testing where we've actually thrown the Kestrel off the roof of our building and then ran over it with a car, and it still worked. So we take a lot of pride in our drop testing.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. So Katie, when you're developing products, I guess it doesn't always go smoothly. You talked a little bit about your love for the Blue Ocean Megaphone. Can you tell us about an occasion when you had a hiccup in the process and what happened?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, with the Blue Ocean, we've had hiccups with that process. We've definitely perfected. Over the 15 years I've been here, I've seen a lot of improvements on identifying problems and stopping the process before we move forward and get ourselves locked into a problem. We are considered a lean manufacturer, so we always like to hear about problems because it's a new way to find a new answer. And so if anybody on the team has a problem, they will call what we call a red and on light. And a red and on light means all action has stopped until we come up with a solution. It's really effective. It gets the whole team together. Everybody gets on board with what's happening, and we're able to respond quickly.
So I love the idea of traffic lights. Guessing that our listeners don't know much about lean or agile. Can you talk a little bit through what it is and how it comes about in practice?
Absolutely. So lean manufacturing is just a way for us to be more reactive to our customers' needs and demands. Our production floor, everything is built here in Pennsylvania on our floor, and we build everything in what we call a one-piece flow. So rather than building 50 pieces at a time and sending them all out to be shipped out, we build one piece the whole way through. That way, if we do identify a problem, the process is stopped with that one piece before more pieces are created that would have the same problem. Lean also helps us keep a lower amount of inventory in stock, but still be flexible enough that when a coach needs a new wiring harness that following weekend for his race, they can get it. And it lets the customers without having too much overhead and too much hanging around us.
Does it mean that you don't hold stock, that you build to order? It's a little bit in between. We typically strive to have a 10-day stock. We do forecasting based on our history and based on anything that we know that's happening in the market, and we will then hold at least a 10-day supply of all of the products. Some of the products that we sell more frequently or that go out at higher volumes, we will increase those to do, maybe a couple more days than 10 days. But we don't build to order. We build to demand. Very interesting. And tell me, how many product lines do you actually have?
Well, we have three main product lines, which is all of our NK Sports Performance. That's what most rowers are familiar with, the Cox boxes, the speed coaches. We have the Blue Ocean line, which is our Blue Ocean audio. And then we also have the Kestrel line, and the Kestrel is our line of handheld weather and environmental meters.
Now, rowers, of course, possibly don't know much about Kestrel, but I'm guessing it's all part of the same mindset. Is there anything there that we could be using?
There is, absolutely, and it's used in a lot of the season regattas. So the Kestrels will do wind speed, wind direction. They also do water temperature, and having those factors in on FISA course is always very helpful. If you're looking at somebody that's setting a world record, knowing the water temperature and knowing what the wind direction, if it's a ripping tailwind and the water's really warm, that's when world records can be broken.
Yeah. And how do they work? Can you describe them?
It's a similar technology to how the impeller works on a boat to get speed. There is a rotating impeller on the Kestrel, and there's a magnet in that impeller, and there's a sensor in the Kestrel that reads the rotation of the magnet, and that's how it gets wind speed. So some of the technology that we use in rowing helped us develop the Kestrel.
That's fascinating, and I'm loving it. I'm guessing there are some kind of non-sporting applications for weather as well, and wind speed.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many different applications for weather, and we have a lot of fun here in the office, always learning our different applications. Wildland Firefighting, they depend heavily on relative humidity levels. That's going to tell them how the trees, how the wildlands may burn. We have a lot of military applications as well, so it's a very different market than the people we get to spend regattas with. And then we even have some, they're used in paranormal inquiries. So when they're out ghost hunting, they can use a Kestrel to look for environmental changes.
I love that. So you have customers who are into ghost hunting. Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So if I'm a regular club or university rowing coach, what might I use a wind meter for?
Typically for a regular university coach or a club coach, you'd want to use it for basic weather conditions, looking for safety first off, to make sure that the wind speeds aren't too high that they would be creating unsafe water conditions if the winds are blowing up the water too much. And then also they measure temperature and wind chill. So as we get into colder months, the river may not be frozen, the lake may not be frozen, but the temperatures might be a little unsafe, especially for smaller boats. If it's a little cold and it's somebody that is as stable in their single as they should be, the risk of them flipping is a much higher concern than in the middle of the summer. So that's one of the main reasons that you would use a Kestrel. The other reason is for coaches that do a lot of seat racing, just making sure that conditions are fair, wind-wise, weather-wise, between seat races. You know, we often, when we do seat races, you'll make a note that there has been a tailwind for this last piece. And it's nice to know exactly what the effect of that tailwind was.
That's absolutely right. Funny enough, one of the most popular ebooks that we have on our website for free download is about seat racing and how to run it. So maybe we should have an additional chapter written by you.
Well, I could assist on that, but I'm guessing somebody else has better writing skills than me. But I would be happy to give our input about how wind can affect it.
Fantastic. Now we have a question in from Scott who says, would anyone at NK be interested in my thoughts on how to make a better box? I'm guessing he means Cox box.
Yeah, and yes, tell Scott to get in touch with us because we really do value the feedback. As everybody knows, we redesigned the Cox box a couple years ago, and part of that redesign was to eliminate some problem areas on the Cox box, some common failures that we've seen in repairs. We still have Cox boxes out in the field that we'll see they come in for a battery change and they're 15 years old. And we love that. You know, we love that our customers take such good care of our products, and we know that they take pride in their products, and we want to continue to make a quality product that they take pride in. So any feedback that people have, and again, we're happy to hear the negatives as much as the positives, but we'd love to hear it.
Fantastic. And should that come to you at headquarters or through the local agents?
They can do either. Honestly, we'd love to have, you know, we have good relationships with all of our local agents, but if they want to talk directly to the manufacturer, we're here for them. We'll continue to support them through our dealers and our local agents. As far as any of the needs that they have, if they need to make a purchase. But if they want to talk products with us, we love to hear from them.
Fantastic. Can you tell us some of the feedback that you personally have had and what's happened as a result?
Well, yeah, I was blessed with getting with having a bow loader boat for quite a few years. And I joke about it because I didn't love laying down in a bow loader 5:30 in the morning or 5 a.m. But to race the head of the Charles in a bow loader 4 is probably one of the funnest boats you can take down that course. But the microphone in our old design, if anybody remembers it, it had a big plastic brick on the side of it. It was so uncomfortable in a bow loader. So I helped redesign the microphone to make it more flexible and make it softer to the side of your head. So after a 2-hour practice, you didn't walk away with a little lump on the side of your head.
That's fantastic. And how did they make it softer and more flexible?
You know, it was just one of those things that we had a product for a long time and we didn't really review the process. Once our materials and when our production manager got his hands on it, and then we had a materials guy get his hands on it, and they looked at it and they were able to very quickly come up with a good solution to make it flexible.
That's fantastic. Instant feedback. There you go, Scott. It could be you. Please send in your advice for improvement. Now, NK's been around for a long time. You said it was founded by 2 friends. What in the whole history of the business do you think is the most innovative product that Nielsen-Kellerman have made?
So in the whole history of the business, it's probably the Pace Coach, which came and went before I was at NK. But the Pace Coach was the first rowing product that really measured boat speed through the water. It had a little boom that went out from the side of the boat. It caused drag. It wasn't ideal, and obviously we learned a lot from how to improve on that. But it was the first time that we could ever do speed through the water and give coxswains and rowers and coaches an idea of how fast their boats were actually moving.
And it hung out over the side of the boat. And then it went under the water. It was just like clamped to the side of the boat, didn't it?
It did, yes. Yeah.
And why did it stop?
It had some design flaws, and again, this all happened before I was here at NK. But as they recognized some of the design flaws, that's how they started to perfect doing the impeller that was mounted on the hull of the boat, doing the impeller that would wirelessly transmit up to the wiring through the boat. So there's no drilling, there's nothing to go through the boat, and it kind of got phased out. But we still see people that use. I have been approached by people at the head of the Charles that have their pace coach, and they have their chronograph, which is the stopwatch that came out before the interval, and they hold on to their treasures.
That's fantastic. It's really interesting to see how long some of these things stick around.
Oh, it is. It is for us. You know, we've gotten in some of the early edition Cox boxes, and people are sending them in not to trade them in, but to actually get a new battery put into them, and it's just amazing for us.
Brilliant. Now, John in Oxford in the UK has sent in this question. Most coaches and crews seek to compare the effect of different pressures and rates on their boat speeds rather than absolute speed. What portable equipment would best serve this purpose?
I think the best product that we have right now is really the XL. The XL series will measure the speed, stroke rate, everything. It has a full data logger, and it also, with the XL 3 and 4, you can transmit that information back to a coach's launch. So a coach can see real-time information. If they're running their crew through a workout where they're trying to figure out the max stroke rate, they'll be able to see as they bump their crew up every two strokes, bumping them up in rate, when their speed starts to taper off and when it's no longer an effective stroke rate. So it's good instant feedback, and it's a way to really have that feel of the boat speed.
Now, I'm going to tell you something that I know, because John coaches in Oxford in the UK. He does not have a coach boat. They are coached from a bicycle. How would you use it in that situation?
We actually have quite a few coaches that have mounted them onto their bicycle.
Wow. So, but you don't sell a bicycle mount or anything, you just tape it on the handlebars?
We don't, unfortunately. I think that there's a couple of different products. We've had some requests for bicycle mounts for the Blue Ocean Megaphone, which I find scary to think of these coaches barreling down a bike path with a megaphone attached in front of them. But yeah, we don't have a solution right now for how to mount the XL onto the bike, other than a ball of tape, I guess.
Well, I learned something a while ago from, it was a joke, but it was pretty true for rowing. It's like, if it's supposed to move and it doesn't move, apply WD-40 lubricant. If it does move and it's not supposed to move, use tape.
We employed that a lot when I was rowing. Yeah, part of my coxswain gear kit always had electrical tape and even duct tape.
Yeah, that's right. Now, Elizabeth in Orlando has gotten in touch and asked, how do you go through the stress of sitting down on the erg knowing it's going to hurt, but you keep going?
Well, I have to tell you, I am a coxswain for a reason, and I do not sit down on ergs very often. So I do not have to suffer through what the rowers have to suffer through as a coxswain.
But you were a coach.
But I was a coach? Yeah, absolutely. But again, I did not spend all of the winter hours on ergs. I was able to do other things to keep my weight down for being a coxswain, and I could go running on a treadmill. I could do other things. I would get on it. I did get on erg so that I could better understand what the rowers were going through and work through techniques and how I would tell myself to improve my techniques so that I could then tell rowers how to do it. But as far as a big long erg workout or a 2K, I did not do those.
Elizabeth, sorry, there's no answer there for you. Now we're just going to take a short break now with a word from our sponsors. RowingChat is supported by the RP3, the dynamic rowing machine of choice for rowers and scullers. Did you go to Henley Royal Regatta this year? In the athlete warm-up tent were 4 RP3s with the new monitor. It displays the unique force curve. RP3 is the new model indoor rower built in stainless steel. It's used by Mahi Drysdale from New Zealand, Kim Crow from Australia, and the US men's squad. By simulating rowing, it has a better training effect than other ergs, and with the unique force curve, it can show how your power is applied to make boats go faster. Learn more at rowperfect.co.uk/rowperfect or contact us for a free trial. Now, back to you, Katie. You slipped in a little mention then of weight loss for coxswains. Can you tell us what your favourite weight management techniques were?
Yeah, well, one of the reasons that I became a coxswain was because I am a little person. I'm 5'3", my height, and I've always been naturally pretty slim. I never, through my coxswain career, I always was one of the coxswains carrying sandbags and everything. I never really had to mind my weight that much. And I was very fortunate. I don't love the practice of having girls or boys that are naturally a heavier weight trying to lose weight to be a coxswain or even to be a lightweight rower. I think that it's a balance, and especially in high schools, I prefer to have coxswains that are naturally at that weight or boats that can carry around the extra weight because their coxswain's just that good.
So as far as your own weight management, did you just eat carefully?
I did eat carefully. I did, but that's just my nature. I always have. But I was lucky that I could occasionally have a pizza and still be okay.
So you did weigh yourself?
I did weigh myself, yes.
Now, moving on to another question about the erg. What can a coxswain do while the crew is erging? Right.
So I think from my personal experience, there's 2 different measures. When they're doing steady state, for a steady state row, most rowers don't want to hear anything from their coxswain. They'd rather just focus on what they're doing and just get through it. When they're doing a test on the erg, there's some rowers, I would always ask my rowers what they wanted. If they wanted to be coxed through their full test, if they wanted to just hear something at every 500-meter mark, if they wanted random 10s called out to kind of help them, if they wanted me to watch for fatigue showing on their face and make calls that I knew would help that individual. And I think that's really it's not the best here, do this exact thing, but I think really understanding what your crew needs and what the people that you're working with that are on the ergs at the time want to hear is better than just coming in and aggressively calling out pieces.
What's the weirdest thing anyone's asked you to shout at them?
Oh, my. Well, I do have, when I work with men more than when I work with women, they prefer to have a lot of swear words used, and they will count how many times I say certain words, and if I don't say those certain words enough, then they yell at me for not using those words enough. So
it's interesting, men and women have different motivators.
They do. They certainly do, yeah.
Now, going back to your own coxing career, Can you remember your very first outing and what happened in it?
Oh, yeah, of course, of course. And again, when I walked onto Temple's team, every day I would carry down an oar. I'd be like, "I'm ready, coach," and he'd say, "No, put that back," and I'd have to put my oar back, and I'd get in. And so I remember one of my first times out, I was counting out the strokes, and I thought, "I'm really nailing this. I'm doing a great job." And the varsity went by and laughed and laughed. And I was saying, I was calling out each stroke, and the time that it took me to say the word one, my crew was able to do about a stroke and a half before I got to two. And so I quickly learned that I needed to be a little more succinct in my word choices and how quickly I said things.
It's very interesting how little information there used to be out there for coxswains. There were always books on rowing and technique and sculling technique, but not for coxswains. And of course now there are fantastic resources for coxswains to learn these things, which of course you would say are basic because you are an experienced coxswain. But at the time, there was nothing.
Oh, absolutely. And I do think that coaches are typically, most coaches are not coxswains. There's some fantastic coaches that started off as coxswains, and I think that they give a little more insight into the coxswain, and they are able to leverage the coxswain early on into more of a helpful assistant coach to them. But coaches that started off rowing usually can't give a lot of advice to their coxswains.
Yeah, it's one of these things. We have an ebook which is called Coaching the Coxswain for coaches who do not cox, and that was really deliberate. The author wanted to ensure that she was helping to close that knowledge gap.
That's fantastic. I love that.
What frustrated you most when you were coxing?
Frustrated me most when I was coxing. Well, losing. I didn't care for that. Well, I would say I'm a pretty competitive person, but I would say that was one of my biggest frustrations. Is, you know, if you don't do well in a piece, even if you're just piecing, and then you would talk to the rowers afterwards, and they're not out of breath, and you could tell that they hadn't put the full effort into it. I just didn't understand why they were there in my boat if they didn't have that passion. So that was definitely a big frustration.
Do you think that passion that you described is something that can be taught, trained?
I think a little bit of it can be taught. A little bit of it has to come from experience too. You know, when I coached high school kids and adults, I did learn to row adults, and some people catch that passion right away, and some people are there because their parents want them to be there. So I think some of those people that some of the kids that their parents sent them fell in love with rowing, fell in love with the sport, and they're rowing after college. And some of them stopped as soon as their parents let them stop. But the passion, I like to think that coaches are a great ambassador of the passion. You can spread it to them. You can show them how much fun it is. I have a woman that I taught her how to row, and she is traveling the world rowing in all these interesting spaces and sending me information back about it. I'm envious of her rowing now, but it's pretty neat that I got to be a hand in getting her into the sport.
Well, if she comes down our neck of the world, please put her in touch with us.
I will. I think she's right now rowing in Holland. So
there's an awful lot of canals to row in Holland.
Yeah.
One of my friends used to row in Belgium, which also has canals, and she said there was this great long straight, but halfway down there was a bridge, but the bridge was very low and too narrow to go through in a single scull. So she said what you had to do was take one really big stroke, then lie down backwards and pull your oars in towards you to glide under the bridge.
Wow.
I thought it was pretty scary.
Yeah.
Now, have you got any advice for our listeners about whether it's beneficial to go on camp?
Yeah, I do. I think that when you go on camp, you're going to be exposed to a lot of athletes that you wouldn't be exposed to normally. If you just stay with your own program, that's all the more growth you can have. Going out to camp, you're going to meet other athletes that have had different experiences. You're going to meet other coaches that may sometime in life be coaches that can help you get into places that you want to be. So I do think that it's a good experience.
And have you personally been on rowing camps?
I have coached some rowing camps, but I have not been on rowing camps.
Tell us about the ones you coached.
I coached in summer programs, and we would have a mix of all different high schools all around the Philadelphia area of all these kids that normally race against each other, and they would come together and be able to row together during the summer. And it was a lot of fun, and you would see it then when you'd come back into the fall season when they had to race against each other, that, they'd go up to the starting line and be excited to see one of their summer friends in the next boat. They'd be excited that somebody else made it into a varsity boat. So it definitely set off a good relationship that carried on through college and after.
It's quite interesting you say that, because we have just experienced the same thing where I row. We set up a masters camp group, and so we took masters from lots of different clubs and brought them together. And it's definitely been a lot of fun to chop and change your crew, to get the voice of a different coach. But it also has meant that an awful lot of them have moved on technically, and then they go back to their clubs and explain to the guys who are back in the clubs what they've learned.
Exactly. I think that it's such a great experience for these clubs to be able to have their athletes come back from that different experience, and then the clubs that are open to taking that new advice and moving on with technique and stuff. It's great.
What's the best place, asks Tom, to find information on rigging a single?
So I love Mike Davenport's book of the nuts and bolts of rigging. And I think that there's also just so many, from when I was a coach, there's so many more places that coaches and coxswains can find information on how to rig a single. I'm sure that you, Rebecca, have a lot of resources on that.
Funny enough, we actually sell Mike Davenport's book as an ebook on our store, so thank you for that.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, Mike is an awesome fellow and very, very generous with his advice and guidance. And I find that that's a binary thing. There are some coaches who are very secretive, and then there are some who are extremely generous. Have you found that?
Absolutely, yep. And I agree with your assessment of Mike. He's a great guy, and I think he's one of those people that helps fuel the passion of rowing by just sharing his knowledge.
That's very, very true. And in fact, here at Row Perfect, we get a lot of guest blog posts from people who are similarly inspired. So if any listeners would like to write for us, we would love to have you. Send a photo between 300 and 400 words. And if it's controversial, we don't mind. As you know, we've hosted a few great online arguments in our past. Now, Katie, that wraps up all the questions that I have for you, but perhaps there's something that you wish I'd have asked you and I haven't.
Oh, something that I wish you would have asked me. That's a tough one. I guess, I don't know, I know that one thing that you kind of had in the write-up about me talking was how my passion of the sport has guided my career. And I think that it's important to know that it's guided more than my career. I met my husband through rowing. He was in one of the boats that I coxed. And we now have 2 little boys, and we're expecting our third daughter in about 3 months, or our third child, and it's a dog. My dog coached with me and has traveled with me. I've traveled to all parts of the world to participate in rowing and dragon boating. And, all of that is because I walked on the Temple's crew team. And my entire job, everything that I do with NK is because of that, that first step of getting into rowing. And I'm eternally grateful to rowing. It's guided my whole life. It's decided where I was going to live in life, and it's neat. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about the sport, because it really has affected every aspect of me.
And did your parents find this odd?
Did what? I'm sorry?
Did your parents find this odd?
They did. They did. In fact, my grandmother, till the day that she passed, swore that I went out in a canoe like an Indian and just paddled around with one knee up. So she really never quite grasped what I was doing out there. I come from a small town in central Pennsylvania. There's no rowing there, so it was kind of hard to even explain to a lot of my friends and family. But my parents fully embraced it, and they came to, throughout my entire collegiate career, they came to every single race except for 2. And they made us homemade cookies for my boat, and their cookies were actually shipped to the 2 races that they didn't make it to.
I think that sounds marvelous. It's lucky you weren't coxing lightweight.
I know. I know. The girls were bad enough. They sometimes felt like they couldn't eat the cookies, but they disappeared pretty quickly.
That's fabulous. It is interesting when you discover something and then your family gets behind it. I thought I was the first one in my family to row, and then my father said, hey, no, in the attic we have this old oar from your great-grandfather. He rowed at Cambridge University, and we dug it out and we hung it on the wall.
Oh, that is so neat. That's fantastic.
I can't say it was in my blood, but it was kind of nice to find a connection with one of my ancestors.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, Katie, we give out a free prize draw every month to all the subscribers to the Row Perfect newsletter. So if anybody who is listening and is not yet a subscriber, you still have time, because we draw it on the first day of the next month. That'll be the 1st of August. Go to our newsletter subscribe page and join the list. And it is a random draw. We go to the newsletter list inside FeedBlitz, which is the email sending program we use, and it has a little button that says Select Random. And this month, you're very kindly giving us a prize. Can you tell us?
Yeah, we're going to be giving one of the NK gear bags. So it is a padded gear bag that can hold your flask, your speed coach, and all of your coxing tools, or any of your rigging tools, anything that you need.
Thank you very much for your generosity. What we'll do is we'll draw the prize, as I said, on the 1st, and then we'll get it shipped over to you. So best of luck to everybody. Now, Katie, it's been an absolute delight having you with us here on Rowing Chat. Thank you for your investment and time. Thank you to the NK team and their Twitter feed for getting behind us. And we've had an absolute ball. We've had fabulous insight into your personal history, but also into your product set, and we're really grateful for that.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Rebecca. I loved this time, and I really appreciate it. I appreciate you inviting me to participate in this. It's been great.
Thank you very, very much. And listen up for next month's Rowing Chat guest announcement, which will be out in a week or so.